Yes, we are live in Glasgow, the not so United Kingdom, for the United Nations Climate Gathering. Yes, it feels much like the Berlin Conference in those yesteryears. The only difference is this time there are global African head of states and elites at the table. And what is more important this time is that Russia and China are war. These so-called very important United Nations environmental meeting. But China had said that because of the Eurocentric Gragrazok, we are going to Gragralize. But Russia should not be remiss because they made sure that there was a supply of BlackRussian. And all the majority of the African delegates, including Boris Johnson, Prime Minister Trudeau, Joe Biden, and of course the ambassadors, were portion a cup of BlackRussian. So when you see them grammarizing, it's the fault of a BlackRussian drink. You're not a BlackRussian like me, because many of our brothers ran away from Babylon, United States, and went to Soviet Union. Those were the days of what we call the Cold War, when Africans were used again, just like the pharmaceutical world, as guinea pigs. We ran away to Russia. We were still suffocated, and baby, African-looking babies were the symbol of freedom when they were still kicking our balls. But yes, the climate. The only sensible person that so far spoke unapologetically is my beloved sister from another mother, Mayor Murphy of the Prime Minister of Barbados. I think the Queen is still recovering from that one-way ticket boat that was sent out of Barbados to uncrown Her Majesty as head of state for Barbados. So she's recovering from that, and she has to give a video conference call. I was expecting the Queen to use this opportunity to apologize for the unclimatic genocidal acts of the Eurocentric world, especially Great Britain, on the genocidal transatlantic slave trade. But yet again, she dodged and spoke about when global countries come together. Now on the subject of climate, well, they might want to paint China as the culprit, as the polluter. But let's don't forget that Europe's industrialization wiped out all trees in Europe. All trees that are now planted are virgin trees. And Europe had been at the center of deforestation and rubbishing of Africa, North America, East, South, and everywhere else, but failed to take the responsibility. Canada, my black-faced brother Trudeau, I know, is called to be a champion, but let's check the backyard, even though it's a little better. Yes, but Africans can no longer just be invited to these global conferences where they give them BlackRussian and promise them aid and loan. That is allowing the drug pusher to be pushing your head. Now, talking of drug pushers, how can our global African leaders and countries rewrite the narratives of the global mess? Demand from the United Nations. Of course, no demand can work because they'll give you BlackRussian. Stop chopping the trees and bulldozing them out of Africa and blaming the so-called natives for that. stop digging and piling and shipping and boating all the soils out of the continent and still blaming global warming on the natives. On natives a problem, and say that the TSN, most of the mining corporations are registered in Canada, and they are the global criminals. They wipe and then they come and become philanthropists. You know, they build hospital beds and hospital departments in their name. They are criminals disguised as corporate giants. We have to unball the bowels of corporate greed, Western greed, and China in the mix. China using the European, especially Great Britain, 99-year land deals. So whenever China wants to go into a deal, he include a parcel of land. Yes, and Africans are quick to always cite Singapore. Singapore did this. We don't talk about the greatness and perseverance growth of nations like Botswana. I was speaking to a ranting professor of Africa geopolitics when I called Botswana. I said, oh, they are just a little farming country. Little did he know that the first prime minister under his Labour leadership was able to transform that little rugged farming nation into a giant, diamond digging place, into a giant that was supplying organic cow meat to the EU. And Botswana is one of the pride of Africa, but because we don't tell our story. And I'll be remiss to conclude this episode without challenging my great brother, Dr. Umar Johnson, that you miss the ball sometimes, just like all our brothers and sisters born outside of Africa, that African Americans have the money, invite us to come. Are you kidding me? You know how rich your continent, your ancestral home is? Who are the rich people that are African Americans? Michael Jordan, that does not even own 1% of Nike, that is making billions in his name? The sports celebrities, those are donuts. Yes, there's money in the continent. We just have to harness and harvest it together, as you say. Yes, no one needs a DNA to go back to the motherland. We have to go humble, not as the civilized, as you clearly indicated, but as humble kids returning to their roots. And don't just go and create specified locations and name them after the tormentors. Go back as a humble child to join in the redevelopment and retelling of our stories. And we should stop rubbishing ourselves. Let us look at the history and development of those kingdoms that existed way before those who claim civilization claim to be. Our stories did not start across the Atlantic. Our stories were long planted in the pyramids and the jungles of Timbuktu, because that place was a jungle until Europeans chopped all the trees, but we can no longer blame them. Africans need to wake up and be the goat of their destiny. It is time to unconference all these EU conference and other conferences that call Africans together. I saw a despicable youth gathering with the Prime Minister of France, or the President of France, Macron. What had Macron got to do? He has no balls but to suck the blood of Africans wherever. And these so-called young elite children gather around and ask him questions. Would you want transformation? All they're looking for is aid money and funding money for their privileged organizations. It is time to shut the bullshit up